Hi guys, my name is Ron Falconi and welcome to another edition of Meet Your Neighbor. I had this idea back in the fall of 2006 where I wanted to interview local politicians, local business people, local people in our community so you would have a better chance to meet your neighbor. We have a very special guest today. She is the director of the divorce care program at St. Ambrose, and she's also the wife of my councilman and my colleague on city council, Councilman Capretta. And we are honored today to have the councilman's wife with us, Diane Capretta. Diane, welcome to the studios today.
Thank you very much, Ron. I'm glad to be here.
Hey, Diane, can you explain your ministry at St. Ambrose and for people who are watching right now in Brunswick, Brunswick Hills, Wadsworth Township, or people watching on the net?
Okay, we have a great program at St. Ambrose in Brunswick. We're at 929 Pearl Road is where the church is located in Brunswick, Ohio. The church is very committed to people who are hurting. And as a result, when it comes to divorce, Father Bob and the leadership of the church were very approachable. When I had been here about a year, I'd been living here since I married Tony, and I came up to them and I said, I have a burden to help people that have been through divorce. I've been through it. It's horrifying when you're going through it, and I don't know what I would have done without the divorce care group that I had to lean on. And I would like to start a program like that here. And to my delight, the diocese had already adopted divorce care, the actual curriculum, so it is approved. However, it's not a Catholic program. It's an interdenominational program that is unapologetically Christ-centered. It is a Christian program, but anybody is welcome to come. In my program in Talmadge 10, 12 years ago when I attended, we had a Jewish lady come, and there were people from all walks.
So you don't necessarily have to be Catholic or even necessarily Christian to be part of this.
No, but we will continue to focus on Christ as the answer and the author of healing, because that's our belief, and we're unapologetic about that. But the church supports this program, so I'm delighted to have an opportunity to talk about it.
Where on St. Ambrose's property do you guys usually meet?
We usually meet at the grade school from 6:30 to 8 o'clock every other Monday night. And we made it every other because attendance is difficult week after week.
Sure.
It tends to be like shared parenting in a lot of situations. So we've had pretty consistent, it may be working out that way, pretty consistent attendance every other Monday night. But if they need a social gathering, I arrange that too.
Okay. How many people are part of the group right now?
I would say a total of 9,
and
we have pretty consistent attendance by 7 core members besides myself.
Okay.
Some of the people who attended in the past, I started this in January 2010. So we're going on 4 years that we've had the group available, and as a result, people who've been in it through the past or may want to touch down again, they could only go so long before, they're always welcome back. And that's good for the new people who are facing a very uncertain future, to see how people have come through and they actually smile, they live again, and you don't think it's going to happen for you, but it does.
No, well, Diane, as you know, I practice as an attorney. I practice family law, so I handle usually just the marriage, or the divorce or the dissolution part of it, the legal part of it. But then once it's over, the legal part may or may not be over, but then the rest of the living has to go on.
It's very difficult, and I think that very often the people who attend our group are people who were blindsided by the divorce decision. It was not theirs. They didn't want it. I know I didn't want it. And I believe in marriage and everything, but as they say, it takes 2 to make it and only 1 to break it. So if there are people breaking the covenant, their partners are kind of lost. And unfortunately in the past, there haven't been a lot of groups that openly embrace them, and it's a couples-oriented society. So that's one of the biggest hurdles they face. They don't know where to turn, and nowhere seems particularly welcoming.
When you have your group of 8 or 9 people, is what happens during a meeting? Do you guys talk about? Obviously, you talk about your own experiences. Do you teach it like a class? Is it more?
It's kind of both. It's very casual. In fact, I always bring pizzas and pop, because I know people are coming on the fly from work, and I want them not to feel like they've got to sit through it with their stomach grumbling or anything. The whole point is to meet them where they are. And so it's sort of a nonverbal way I like to say, hey, I get this. It's hard for you to come, but I'm glad you're here. We open with a prayer because, again, it's Christ focused, and he's the one who heals. I'm not a counselor. I happen to be a nurse, but I'm just a coordinator for this group, and the curriculum is called Divorce Care. Anyone can look it up online. It's international, interdenominational. By no means do you have to be a member of St. Ambrose or even Catholic to attend.
Okay.
We welcome people from all walks of life, but it is Christ-centered, and we look to him as the author of the healing that we need.
Can you describe like a typical
Sure.
meeting?
Well, I come in with the pizza, generally dropping things all over the floor. And we meet at a few different round tables. You know, if there's like 9 people, it would usually be about 3 tables in the grade school library, which has a nice electronic, one of those TV boards, you know.
Yes.
So we use that for the video display. There's a video each week. It generally lasts anywhere from 35 to 40 minutes. It begins with the first of 13 in series, called What's Happening to Me. And this is an important one for newly separating or divorced people to attend, because they can't figure out why they've left their car keys in the freezer again. You know, you're just a mess. So, you know, when you realize what's happening and how your energy is being diverted, it makes you feel like, oh, okay, then I'll get through this and it'll be better.
Sure.
And then I have everyone tell me, how's your week gone, just in a nutshell. And sometimes we can get a little bit derailed here, so because if somebody's having a really big problem, but I facilitate the group so there's enough time to see the video. We meet, as I said, from 6:30 to 8, so that's kind of hard. It gets a little tight, but we'll listen to everybody's update. Here's some examples that I might have heard in my past groups. My divorce was finally final, yay, and it sounds horrible to say that, but after months to years of feeling tortured and at risk of exploitation in one way or another, no one can hurt you that way anymore. The book is closed as far as their legal ability to do that. So by the time that comes around, it's a relief for a lot of people. Another might say, my ex is fighting me for custody. Another might say, mine is harassing me at my job. Some of the behaviors you see are representative of acting out of very bad behavior. You know, if people are with another partner, for example, it gets really ugly a lot of times. So they'll share a little bit about that, and then we move into the video. And the topics that we cover, besides what's happening to me, are things that are very relevant. How to handle my anger, because anger is a natural part of loss.
Of course.
And so some of us are a little more, vocal about that than others, but how to deal with it and not sin. Anger is not a sin according to the Bible. It's what we do with it. Be angry, but don't sin in your anger, is the verse that most clearly represents that. So we go over in the anger chapter of the workbook that the church provides free of charge. They have it to study at home. There are verses to support them through that. And then there's a video of people who've been through it before. And here's how I felt. It made me so mad when blank, whatever the affront was for that individual. And then they'll have professional counselors, Christian counselors, pastors giving their input on the video. And that's where the expertise comes in. As I said, I'm not an expert, I'm not a counselor, but I like to create an environment where people are listening to those who are. So it works well.
So there are other counselors that come to the sessions also?
No, they're in the video.
Or in the video. They're in the video.
One of the biggest rules we have there is what's said in divorce care stays in divorce care. And we have to have that rule because confidentiality is so important. So having people come through can make the group feel very skittish. They want it to be private. They understand one another. We all get it.
Yeah.
But outside there's no certainty of that. So we pretty much limit it to that. Father Bob does come in and talk a little bit in the beginning, and then we have the lady from the diocese about annulments. We have them give a presentation why that might be something people would want to consider doing. I was really glad I did that. It was like an autopsy, so you see what killed the marriage, and then you can avoid it in the future.
Sure.
It's very helpful.
We may have touched on this before, earlier in our conversation, but what made you decide to want to do this?
I felt like the Lord led me. I was so grateful that Debbie McGuire, who was the leader in Talmadge when I was just falling apart back in 2002, she was leading this group. I drove by the sign for Talmadge Lutheran Church, and there it was, come to divorce care. And I went in, and I couldn't stop crying. I could not stop crying because I'd finally come somewhere that understood. And that's happened in our group. There was one young lady who came in and she cried, I think, every week for 6 weeks. She couldn't really talk to anybody, but she knew it was a safe place. And so now she's doing beautifully, just beautifully. And it's so wonderful to see it. But hers was an interesting example. There's so much fault finding that goes on in divorce, particularly on the part of the person who's choosing to leave.
Right.
That we have had people in the group that have actually been told, you keep the house too clean.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, nobody's told me that. But, that's, you can find anything to find fault with if you've got
Sure.
a mind to. And so, picking up those pieces is part of what I do.
Okay. Diane, if someone wanted to get a hold of you or to join,
Mm-hmm.
what do they need to do?
Well, at the St. Ambrose Bulletin, which is online, they
Okay.
often list my phone number. I'm happy to have people call my cell phone number. It's 330-351-5471. It doesn't
Okay.
matter where we're at in today's sequence. You can come anytime and join us. I plan on it being ongoing as I'm allowed to by God, But that way, if you come in on video 5, if you just keep coming, I'll start again and we'll be able to get through all the topics.
Stuff again.
Yeah, things like financial management, child care, how to deal with children. I would like to share one thing for anybody considering separation and divorce. It's extremely important for the kids to know three things. First, that mom and dad still love them.
Yes.
Second, that they're going to be okay. They can't hear this enough. But the third and most important is it's not your fault. Children always look for a way to blame themselves for what's happening in their family. And when you see that happen, that brokenness needs to be addressed.
Okay.
I hope one day we'll be able to have divorce care for kids. There's actually an arm of divorce
That's
care.
not a bad idea.
Yeah, well, they have them in other groups around the area. Ours is not the only divorce care group. You can go to www.divorcecare.com, and it'll say, find a group in your area. You put in your zip code, and it'll show you all of them in the vicinity. There was one up at a church on Grafton Road that had divorce care for kids, but I'm the only leader at St. Ambrose, so I can't do both, obviously.
Sure.
But I keep praying that when God's timing's right, there'll come in another volunteer that'll say, I'd like to lead the divorce care for kids.
Okay. Can you, Diane? I know that you said you've run the program now since
2010.
Since 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's been several years now.
About 4, yeah.
And I also mentioned that you've married my colleague on council, Anthony
Yes.
Capretta. So towards the end of that, towards the end of all of the pain, there is hope in the end.
Oh, there is. The thing is I think focusing on a Christ-centered approach is very self-protective. It keeps you from making stupid mistakes, many of which I made anyway. But, you get back on the horse and you keep going. I believe in love. I believe in marriage. It's an institution that was created by God. It's meant to be beautiful and a way to live life that's fostering for families and a propagation of not only family but faith. So this social structure is extremely important.
Sure. Just
because I had bad things happen through the frailty of humanness does not mean that the institute of marriage is bad. So I certainly didn't have any intention. Everybody says,
Sure.
I would never get married again. I just can't stand it. I can't imagine going through this again if I put myself at risk. But the truth is 95% of people do get remarried eventually, but they need to be careful how they do it. You date for a long time. You make sure your future partner is what you hope they are. I probably took it to an extreme with background checking and everything, but you can't be too careful. But it's poor Tony. But I'm very happily married, and I trust him completely, and that's the part that's hard to do.
Sure.
You still,
how do you build up the trust again after?
I think by dating a long time,
Yeah.
by being honest about where I had been and why certain things could be triggers for me to get upset or feel threatened, But I like to think I'm a pretty stable person. So generally, Tony and I can talk out things, and there's an honesty and a loyalty, a devotion there that's mutual, and it's different. It just is different. And I think part of it's because I didn't settle. That's an important thing.
Diana, I know you gave me some photos, and I wanted to share that with our viewers.
Okay,
and,
that's fine.
Maybe if you can also tell us about some of these photos as well.
Okay.
Tell us about your family, like right here. Oh, this is your.
Well, that's our wedding. Tony and I got married out at Lake Tahoe in
Wow.
September of 2009. You can see the lake in the background. And on the far right, you can see from the right is Angela, my youngest, my other two daughters. There's Tony
Okay.
and I with the priest at St. Francis of Assisi.
St. Francis of Assisi.
That was in Incline
Tahoe.
Village, Nevada.
Oh, okay, okay.
And it was a beautiful place to have a wedding.
It looks beautiful.
Yeah, it was nice.
These are your
Those are my
daughters?
3 daughters, and then the blonde on the left is my good friend Marilyn Collings. She was my matron of honor.
Okay.
So Adrian is on the left there, the long blonde hair. She's in Holland. She's a researcher, and Maureen.
Yes.
Yeah, they.
Oh, explain this photo to me.
Yeah, they thought that was so funny to pay Tony off to take me off their hands. Yeah, that's
That's your son.
what that was. That's my son,
On the right
Kevin.
there.
He's a hoot. He's so funny. But my kids and I have a really good time. That's Adrian, the one that lives over in Holland.
She lives in Holland.
Yeah, she
Okay.
met somebody over there, so she's taken up her medical research at the
That's
University of Utrecht.
Interesting.
Yeah. Can't wait till she comes
Interesting.
home, though. It's a long way to go.
And then
That's Maureen. She just moved to
Is that
Chicago.
This is
Mhm.
Chicago.
You can tell from the buildings, can't you? She just moved there, and I drove out there last weekend on a quick turnaround so I could see her apartment and everything.
nice.
So, yeah, and there's my youngest in the foreground there, Angela. She's just, she's a little whirlwind, that one. But I love them dearly, and they get along great with Tony. But again, that's a function of a lot of time spent,
Sure.
building relationships because it's hard
sure.
for them to trust.
Sure. Diane, can you tell me something about yourself that no one else knows about you?
Well, there's. I don't suppose too many people know I'd love to learn to fly. I took flying lessons
you
at
did?
one point, but then the furnace broke and had to make a decision, heat or flying lessons. So, but I'd love to learn to fly. I'd love to learn to fly a helicopter.
Oh.
I don't know. I got issues, but I think that would be a blast.
Diane, can you tell me, you said that you're a nurse. Can you tell me more about your educational background?
Sure. I got a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from Ohio State University way back in the day. I won't say when. And I have been mostly an adrenaline junkie kind of nurse. So I did ER trauma, critical care, open heart. Those were my areas of interest. I also diverted. I always would take opportunities to do something different, like infection control I did for 3 years. And for 5 years previously, I had been a legal nurse consultant, and it worked out well because being a nurse, as you may know, is getting harder and harder because staffing is leaner and leaner in hospitals, and sometimes the patients are very big, and you can't lift somebody by yourself and you get injured. And so after so many years, decades, I've gone back into an office setting. I can't physically do the nursing work like that and be lifting people like that anymore. I just am falling apart. So I thought I'd keep things strung together while it was still intact.
Diane, what are some of the other things that you like to do for fun?
Oh, I love riding my motorcycle. That goes over big.
Well, it's like
Tony, he's not a fan. But, I go when I can. It's something that was part of my post-divorce renaissance when I was living my life as a single, and I had healed from the loss of the marriage and had learned to navigate living. And, I thought, well, what do I want to do? And I was so surprised to find out I'd never even asked myself that question ever. So that's when I started the flying lessons and bought a motorcycle. And apparently nobody teaches you how to ride a motorcycle. You have to teach yourself. You eventually can get into the class, but you're expected to be able to stay on it. So there are little things, I don't ride all the time, obviously. I'm not really a motorcycle mama kind of person, but my matron of honor and her husband, they both ride too. So it's just fun. Yeah.
Diane, for every guest on the show, I like to play a game of fill in the blank, okay?
Okay. All right.
When I was a child, I blank.
Oh, I was too fearful.
Too fearful? Fearful of what?
Oh, different things, discipline or whatever, it might have been. I ended up being a little too fearful. And now that, again, after my post-divorce renaissance, if I know that fear is playing into a decision, I shut that down right away. Fear is no kind of motive. You can't live in fear. So yeah, I was just kind of a people pleaser kind of kid, and thought if I did everything perfectly, I would go to heaven and everything would be just fine. But life isn't perfect, is it, Ron?
No, it's not.
So you just do the best you can, and you keep putting one foot in front of the other. And that's my philosophy in divorce care too. And it seems to be received very well. Because you can have a lot of fun with life, single or married. It's how you live it.
It's true. It's true. The one thing I want to bring with me on a deserted island is blank.
It was a tie, estrogen and hair coloring. I'm just being honest, you know. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Maybe Diet Dr. Pepper.
Diane, when I retire, I want to blank.
Travel. I'd love to travel and volunteer to do different things. Like, they have NICU baby rockers. I always thought that'd be wonderful to do, and it never worked out when I offered in the past, but I thought that would be really cool to do. Or volunteer at a clinic or go on a mission trip again. I went to Mexico one time for a mission trip.
Oh, where in Mexico did you go?
Oh, Juarez,
Oh.
which is, you can see the towers of El Paso, you know,
Yes.
across the Rio Grande, and then you look around and it was a third world country. There were a lot of gangs and violence.
Jeez.
So it was just a Methodist outreach ministry and a clinic and everything. But, you know, they had a wonderful, wonderful warmth about them and an understanding about life that I hadn't had, you know, that, yeah, we know things aren't perfect, but, you know, we do
Sure.
the best we can and we love each other. And, yeah, it was very interesting. It was eye-opening.
Are there any other places that you wanted to travel to?
Oh, yeah, I'd love to go to Italy with Tony, but Ireland, that's where my family's from,
Oh, okay.
Ireland and France. So I'd love to go to all three. And we plan on going eventually. You know, there always seems to be expenses that come up
Sure.
and interfere. But
Sure. Diane, do you have any neighborly advice to people who are watching right now in Brunswick Hills,
Yes.
Wadsworth Township, or people watching on the internet?
Yeah, pertaining to divorce, I want to invite people to really consider continuing to include their friends that are going through it. You don't have to sit in judgment. You don't have to have all the facts to love somebody. And just letting them know, take them to breakfast once a month. Keep in contact with them. Or call them once a week and say, how you doing? You know, if you're comfortable talking about it, we can talk about it. But if you're not, you know, we can talk about something else. But I just want you to know I care about you. And I know this must be a tough time. And, you know, we're here for you. And let it be their choice. If you're having a couple's get-together where they normally would have come with their soon-to-be or ex-spouse, and you want to invite them, don't hesitate. Let it be their choice. If they're uncomfortable, they'll tell you, you know, and they may want to arrange a lunch date afterward to get with you. But, yeah, just don't give up on them because their isolation is profound. People don't know what to say to them, and then they don't say anything. And you've lost your mate. Like in my case, you lost my home, lost my job, all within a 2-week period. And you have to rebuild, and you don't even know where to start. But I was fortunate. I had a couple of friends that came over and helped me get my new place all fixed up the way I wanted it. And it felt like home very quickly. And I thought, well, maybe I will survive this. You know, it matters when people participate. But if you don't have anything to do with them, it leads to sometimes isolation that can provoke bad decisions. I left the Catholic Church for a while because there was no program like this in it. And so, you know, it was really hard because there was no one to talk to and people just stared at me. And I interpreted that as being, oh, you know, they think I'm a freak or I'm a horrible person because I'm going through this. You know, it was the church I'd grown up in and people did know. It isn't that that's what people are thinking, but it just feels that way, you know. So I think that if there's groups like this, and God bless Father Bob and St. Ambrose because they were so receptive about starting a program like this. We want to promote marriage. Nobody would be happier about reconciliation than me and our group. I mean, all of us are feeling bad because marriage does matter. We're not taking it lightly, you know. But, yeah, so I think I would just invite people to be open and kind and present to people facing it.
That's excellent advice, Diane.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Diane Capretta, the director of the divorce care program here at St. Ambrose. Thank you for coming down to the studios today.
Thank you very much.
It's very
been
informative,
my pleasure.
and thanks for coming down today.
Oh, you're very welcome.
My name is Ron Falconi. I am the host of Meet Your Neighbor. I just wanted to thank Mrs. Diane Capretta for coming down today and chatting with us about her program, Divorce Care at St. Ambrose. I doubt there's anything more profound to be said. My name is Ron Falconi, and I am signing off. See you guys later.